You was just saying that you thought that Tony Blair was the best Prime Minister we've ever had. And I was saying to you, I could hear the groans from certain members of my audience from here. And I was pointing out to you things like people will shout back Iraq, people will talk about 2004 and the expansion of the EU and the complete lack of controls. What would you say to that?
You look at the polling evidence, Tony Blair is seen across the political spectrum as one of the best prime ministers that we've had. You talk about the expansion of the EU. We were in the European Union. You could have had transitional protection. We chose not to because we thought there were benefits. And I think there were benefits. The people who came here worked very hard and contributed to our economic growth. But I'm really not going to take lectures from this Conservative government about migration. You know, listening to Sunak last night when he was talking about surrender, you know, net migration is 3 times higher today than it was when the last Labour government was in office. They've completely lost control of the system. Yes, there's been the boats crisis, but it's also because they've not trained British people, they've not paid them enough to take the work, that foreigners are coming in to do.
First of all, under Blair, they said that there would be a small amount of people from Eastern Europe who came, and we had about 700,000, 800,000 people from Eastern Europe. So when you say take no lectures, it all started, all this stuff, under the Labour Party. And we have been trying every step of the way to bring through legislation to stop migration into the country. The Labour Party have opposed it every step of the way. They opposed Rwanda. They have opposed every single law that we have brought through to try and deal with the backlog, to try and deal. And now Angela Rayner is saying, well, we'll put them all in council houses. And we haven't got enough social housing as it is, and she wants to give them to migrants.
Do you know what, Robert? You say you're trying everything that you can. You know, your party... You didn't, but your party effectively campaigned for Brexit and leaving the European Union. No one who voted for Brexit thought your party would let immigration rip in the way that it has. The numbers have gone through the roof. And yes, there were East Europeans in this country who were working incredibly hard. You've replaced them with a whole host of other people who are enormously challenging for us.
So actually we've brought through, for example, we've stopped people bringing in dependents who are international students. There's been a whole range of measures that the government brought in to try and reduce migration. It has
685,000 placed, 250,000 under the last Labour government.
Last year we cut the boats down by 2/3, but the fact is every single measure...
The boat numbers are going up.
Last year they went down by...
And they're going up in this year.
Yeah, but they went down by 1/3 last year. We also cut down the number of Albanians coming through by huge amounts because we made an agreement with the government. We've made agreements with the French. Absolutely, there's a lot more that needs to be done. But if we don't have the Rwanda scheme, you guys get in next week. It's going to be open door policy. If you think it's bad now, it will be much worse because they are waiting on the border of Calais. They are waiting on the border of Calais, all the traffickers, for the green light for Labour to get in so they can pass the boats because they know you're going to, not only now are you going to stop the Rwanda scheme, but according to Angela Rayner, you're going to give them all council houses as well.
Robert, with respect, that's pantomime politics.
It is not.
You know, we are not in favour of open borders. We weren't in favour of open borders under the last... Hold on. We weren't in favour of open borders at the last Labour government. I was a minister at the Foreign Office who worked with my counterpart in the Home Office on a weekly basis to drive down the asylum numbers.
And we made huge agreements. We made significant agreements.
Let's talk about what actually happened. We drove the number of asylum claims down significantly because we engaged seriously. And the things like Rwanda, it will take 300 years to clear the backlog based on Rwanda. That's not a scheme, it's a gimmick.
That's not true. Rwanda is a deterrent. If people know that once they come here they're going to be sent to Rwanda, it will stop the traffickers from
even if it works to the maximum extent, 1% of people will go to Rwanda. That is not a deterrent.
You and the Labour Party and the House of Lords did everything they could to stop it every step of the way, and every time we've had to bring in more legislation because you won't even give it a chance to see it working. And it would have worked because it would have been a deterrent.
Do you know what? You and I were talking earlier about why Rishi Sunak chose to go early to the country. I think one of the reasons was he didn't want to be tested on Rwanda when a handful of flights took off and the situation got worse.
Well, I think that I think if we'd got the Rwanda scheme through, and I think if the Conservatives did win the election, it would act as a significant deterrent. And you have no policy to deal with it. You just say you're going to strengthen the border force. Well, we've done that already, but you are offering a green light to the traffickers. And now Angela Rayner has said now she's going to give them a council house.
Well, but sorry, what we're talking about is people who are genuine refugees who've been given the right to settle in this country.
You've already said those who are here.
Are you saying you just put them in a small number of communities around the country and that you create massive community tensions?
What I'm saying is that we need to give priority for social housing for those who are British citizens who have been here, who are waiting on the waiting list for a very long time.
I'm listening intently to this, but I actually think the pair of you, both of your parties, have been an absolute shambles when it comes to immigration. I think you've both been appalling, and I think you've both collectively given rise to the likes of Reform UK. Nigel Farage, for example, he was speaking about this very issue of immigration today. Let's take a listen to him.
It is mass migration on a level that in fact begins not just to divide and damage communities and potentially to set people apart from each other, which is dangerous, but also I think a feeling that perhaps something about our culture is directly under threat. That sense of who we are, and that this is a problem. And that's why I've said from the start, this really should be the immigration election.
You see, and this is the thing for many people, it is the immigration election, and I was just letting you guys thrash it out, but respectfully, I don't think either of you get it. When I'm pointing out to you back in 2004 what happened under the Labour government, you're trying to argue to me that that was some kind of positive thing because loads of Europeans, Eastern Europeans, came here to work. What actually happened was it created wage depression. So you had scenarios where British workers were being massively undercut within their trades, whether it was plumbing or whatever it was. It caused people huge problems when it came to their standard of living. It also accelerated the seeds of discomfort that I would say went on to lead to Brexit. So I think that that was one of the starting points. And you don't seem to think that that was such a bad thing. When it comes to your lot, respectfully, I mean, as Bill says, it's completely gone out of control. And we can talk about Rwanda and whether or not it will work and all the rest of it. If Rishi Sunak was so confident that the Rwanda plan was going to work, he would have waited until the plane was off the ground and had been successful, and then he would have called an election and he would have said, see, look at how successful that was. Well, and he didn't, because he didn't think it's going to work either.
Everybody was saying every 5 minutes, including the Labour Party, call an election, call an election, call an election.
Oh, come off. It was a baby that called an election.
No, but I mean, it would have had nothing to do, the election had nothing to do with the Rwanda flights. I absolutely am convinced that Rwanda flights would have gone off over the summer if the Conservatives had been in.
It.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
If you're so convinced, why did Rishi Sunak not wait? If you're all so convinced and you all believe it's going to work, and by the way, I'm in your camp, I disagree with you. I actually think it is a deterrent. It should have been allowed to get off the ground. But if you believed in your policy and you believed it was going to happen, why didn't you have the chops then to make it happen and then call the election afterwards?
Because Sunak had enough.
No, I mean, look, I don't know why, the Prime Minister decided. There was a lot of steam to call an election. The Prime Minister decided, but it had nothing to do with Rwanda. I absolutely believe Rwanda thing had gone off, even though the Labour Party, the lawyers and the House of Lords were doing everything possible to stop it. I'm absolutely convinced. Don't forget, the legislation had been passed, the strengthened legislation in that laws. Rishi had said that absolutely, whatever the foreign courts say, we will still get the Rwanda flights off.
The current Home Secretary described the Rwanda plan as BSHIT crazy, and he was absolutely
well, he's denied that. He's denied that.
With no credibility.
No, he's denied it.
Do you know what, Michelle? I do believe we need some migration. We had that under the last Labour government, but with much smaller numbers. What has happened under this government is the numbers have got out of control. And you played a clip from Nigel Farage. Nigel is a populist. He presents simplistic solutions to complicated problems. He wants to put a 20% tax on businesses who employ foreign workers that they need until we upskill British...
Lots of people think that's a great idea.
Yeah, but until you upskill British workers and pay the wages to enable them to take those jobs, it's not going to work. And if Nigel had his way, our social care system would collapse because it's held up by migrant workers.
I mean, don't make me laugh. The social system would collapse. The social care system is an absolutely diabolical mess because neither of your parties have actually fronted up, grabbed a hold of it and sorted it out. So for decades, we've had an ineffective social care system. So don't come at me and tell me a system that's already broken.
Do you know what? I agree with part of that. I think both parties have failed on social care. But the reality, go into any social care home and there are significant numbers of migrant workers. And if you stop that tomorrow, the system would collapse.
Yeah, and do you know what, as well, everyone will remember